I rise today to honor the Madam Speaker, I rise in support of two pieces of bipartisan legislation the House will consider later today. I introduce these bills alongside Republican colleagues because there is simply no question that they will save lives and protect our children. The first piece of legislation is critical in the fight against the opioid crisis plaguing every single community across our country. Known as the MATE Act, this legislation is simple. It will require that doctors who prescribe highly addictive pain medications are trained to spot signs of addiction and intervene accordingly. Healthcare professionals often interact with and have opportunities to provide effective treatments for individuals suffering from addiction, critical opportunities to save lives. But far too often, those chances to help are missed. In fact, research has shown that most clinicians could not confidently diagnose and treat patients with substance use disorder. Stigma, discrimination, and lack of understanding about addiction have prevented far too many Americans from accessing evidence-based care for addiction. The MATE Act will change that. I drafted this legislation after meeting with a physician in my home state of Massachusetts, Dr. Jim Baker, who shared the tragic story of his son, Max. Dr. Baker was visiting his primary care physician one day when his PCP asked him if there was anything he could do to help. Dr. Baker pleaded with his PC for help with Max's opioid addiction. To Dr. Baker's surprise, his PCP did not have adequate education or understanding of addiction to point Dr. Baker in the direction of appropriate treatment for Max. Max Baker died from an overdose at just 23 years old. Every person in this chamber knows that the Baker story, a parent's worst nightmare, is not unique. Each of us have heard similar stories from families who were willing to do anything and everything to save the life of a loved one battling addiction. We can get these families another path for help by passing the MATE Act. I am grateful to Dr. Baker for his advocacy for this legislation, as well as my colleagues, Representatives Trahan, Carter, Custer, and McKinley, who were instrumental in securing today's vote. The second piece of legislation is just as essential. My bipartisan bill with Ranking Member McMorris-Rogers, Congresswoman Axney, and Congresswoman Kim doesn't need a fancy name, it just needs to become law. That's because it will extend and strengthen key youth and young adult suicide prevention efforts. Many of us have talked about the youth mental health crisis extensively, and the past 2 years have only increased the urgent need for solutions that protect our children. That starts by authorizing the Garrett Lee Smith Memorial Act and the key programs it supports to provide mental health resources, bolster suicide prevention efforts, and end the stigma associated with getting help. Make no mistake, these programs have a long track record of success. Study after study has proven that these initiatives have significantly reduced youth suicide rates for young people and saved tens of thousands of lives. We must ensure that these programs continue, and I urge my colleagues to support this legislative package so we can do just that. Madam Speaker, I rise today to honor the hardworking men and women of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 1505, for their 75 years working at Raytheon in Massachusetts. The members of IBEW 1505 are some of the most skilled in the manufacturing industry in the entire world. They are unsung American heroes, rarely receiving publicity or recognition for their devoted service and ingenuity, but continuing to provide well-made defense systems to American armed forces. The Patriot missile is built by the members of IBEW 1505 along with other advanced defense systems. These systems are active around the world, including right now in Poland, where they're helping to protect our NATO allies. IBEW 1505 has provided many generations of families in Massachusetts with family-sustaining wages and benefits. I am proud to call so many members of IBEW 1505 my constituents and to bring recognition of their 75 years of service to our country here on the House floor of the United States Congress. Thank you, and I yield back.